Jesus freak here, and just been thinking a bit about things. Because I had been remembering how situations were with my family, and admittedly, this was about 30 years ago. That, you know, I mean, obviously, everyone knows you can make the Bible say anything you want it to. But we have, I've had situations specifically with people that would take verses out of context to justify all sorts of things. And they'd use the Bible to justify doing terrible things or putting things through people through terrible. I mean, it's one thing to say, honor your father and your mother, but to twist verses like rebuke not an elder or whatever, or to basically justify, I putting people in double binds, for example, oh, let's let's say that my uncle were to say, for example, that I couldn't do XYZ. And let's say my cousin, who was about 5 years older than me, would force me to do XYZ. This is hypothetical, but just a situation like that could put me in a bind because you either disobey your elders or you disobey your elders. What do you do? And there's no room for common sense when, if you do what they tell you to, then he finds out and you get punished. If you don't, then they rat you out and you get punished. And of course, it's always the older person's word against yours because you're a kid, you're obviously evil and need to, get the devil beaten out of you. Because, Proverbs or whatever, or says, you eat your child, he won't die. And talk about, beating correction into him. And I'm like, my understanding is this kind of thing is obviously metaphorical, but some people take it very, very, very literal. Proverbs aren't literal. They're figures of speech. They contain truth, but they're not literal. But this is, even someone with a straightforward understanding of Scripture has to obviously conclude that certain things cannot be taken literally. I'm not an arrow, for example. If you got figurative speech, then it's obviously not literal. And I'm not saying, the discipline's wrong or whatever. I just think that there's some people that just take something that's not inherently wrong and they make it wrong. Because there's a lot of things that are, they're not right or wrong in and of themselves, but it's how they're used or how they're applied that makes them wrong. And there's been people, it's been said, if you do the right thing for the wrong reason, then it's the wrong thing. Or, if you know what the right thing is and you fail to do it, then it's sin. Or whatever, there's a lot of reasons to say that, there's more to right and wrong than a simple rule list. That you have to take this into consideration. That there's room for sanity. And I don't think that it's right to say, someone's automatically right or someone automatically deserves ultimate authority over someone just because they're older. Which, that's how I was raised. That, anyone who was more than a few years older pretty much could, if they told you to jump and you didn't say how high, they could punish you or they could rat you in to get punished. And of course, like I said, if it's your word against theirs, they're the one that's going to be listened to. It doesn't matter whether they're right or wrong. They're the older ones and you obey. And I mean, I understand the perspective. I disagree with it. There has to be room for common sense. I mean, who gives a person common sense anyway? Which is probably why it's so uncommon. And there's other cases here where you really have to rely on common sense. It's like, just like with faith healing, if you're saying, I don't trust the doctors because they're human beings and God says, whatever, whatever, whatever. Or how do you know that those doctors, how do you know that the medical knowledge that the doctors have wasn't ultimately supplied to someone by God? And if you're just relying on faith without, taking action, isn't it putting God to the test? It's all over the place. Thou shalt not tempt the Lord thy God. Don't test him. It's just like the saying about, the guy in the flood that kept passing up help because he was waiting for God. And, he dies and he's like, God, why didn't you help me? He said, look, I sent the guy in the boat to get you. I sent the guy in the helicopter to get you. And you turned him away. But it's like I've said, there's a lot of people out there that they'd rather, someone sends them a light, they'd rather snuff it out and keep cursing the darkness. Because the light comes to them and it's incomprehensible to them. And I'm guilty of this too. That I've turned down people's offers to help me because I felt, I'm not worthy. I've had more than one person get annoyed at me for this. But maybe I should just acknowledge there's some other force that's trying to help me. And he's trying to help me through these people. He's trying to help me through my friend in New Jersey. He's trying to help me through Pastor Brett. He's trying to help me through Pastor Matt's mother-in-law. I'm not talking about the same Pastor Matt that you guys might know on the internet. I'm not talking about Matthew Everhart. I'm talking about Matthew Kofall, the minister at my own church. Maybe, he's trying to help me through Babcock, the guy who usually takes me to church and back. Or Carol, what's her name, that drives me home when he can't. He's trying to help me through people I know. And I'm trying to get past this idea that because I'm scum of the earth or whatever, and honestly, we all have our faults, maybe I don't deserve help, but if it's being offered to me, why should I, put out the light and keep cursing in the dark? Every once in a while, I've been given an out from my situation. And I need to learn not to pass it up if I need it. I'm working on that. Jesus freak out.